パート1では水星逆行が風のサインから地のサインに変わることについて、物事をよりしっかりと安定させることが大事になる、そして魚座に海王星と木星が合になったことで多くの洪水が発生したというところで終わっています。では続きをどうぞ。
At least that's part of the Chinese understanding and meanings for this sign. It's a water rabbit on top of it, so we've had a water tiger, and we know how wet this year has been, 2022. Jupiter, Neptune were in Pisces, so there was a lot of flooding. Talk to the Australian, talk to the South African, and everywhere. Just today, Christmas week, solstice, is forecasted to be, the coldest in many years. So it's damp, it's wet, for better and worse. After years of drought, we welcome the rain, but too much of a good thing is precarious as well. But I want to retain that the year of the rabbit turns the volume down. It's not as erratic. It's fertile, it's more playful, and it's more gentle in general. So it kind of matches the shift of Jupiter in Taurus as well. So one of the important dates, if we speak about all the things we mentioned, the Mars retrograde cycle is not complete in January. I mentioned that in January, Mars turns direct and starts to gain traction, and it will be in Gemini for several more weeks. And then on March 16, Mars exits what we call the shadow of the retrograde, which is the 25th degree where the retrograde began. Not only is it exiting the shadow, but it's also squaring the Sun, Mercury, and Neptune conjunction. So if you have planets at 25-ish mutable, which is the middle of March, the middle of June, the middle of September, and the middle of December by sun sign, this is a time where that kind of activation of Mars, in a way, goes further into excitement, steroids, possibly overreacting. So this can be a time when you're going to be more defensive, where you're going to want to protect your rights, when you're going to want to speak up. And it can be a time of ruptures, of needing to stand up for yourself. So you can expect a lot of debates, arguments, verbal as well as physical. We can also expect around that time a lot of disorientation, people, being overwhelmed, getting lost. It can be, a severe weather pattern that has people stranded. It can be a time where things are not going according to plan. So this is one of the important dates of the year, mid-March 2023. Natural events and possible chaos, snowstorms and blizzards and water flooding that can basically lead to disasters. could also bring, all different types, earthquakes and hurricanes, because it's in air signs. But on a personal level, it's a time where there's adversity. So it's charged. It's a wild energy. It's a wild card. And it happens to align with Putin's natal Mars at 26 Sagittarius. So we can expect him around that date to intensify his offensive. This is a time where he may feel cornered and he will want to assert his own dominance. It can also mean that, he feels Mars opposition Mars. He feels things are closing on him. It's not easy. He's going to go through the whole year with Neptune squaring his Mars. Neptune square Mars means you're losing control. You're not at the peak of your might. You cannot win battles with Mars Neptune if you don't come from the right intention. It has to have some kind of higher intention. It's, Mars Neptune very much represents the myth of the biblical myth of David and Goliath, where the unexpected, supposedly weaker party ends up scoring unexpected victories. If you push too hard, if you become the aggressor with Mars Neptune, you're deflated. You don't go very far. And so it can definitely lead to a situation where as a compensation, he may push and boost his aggressive stance. And hopefully this doesn't mean nuclear. It's hard for me to know. Pluto moving into Aquarius is tricky in that regard. But that's, these are the alignments. That's the cycle. Let's pay attention to those dates. Soon after, the planet Saturn moves into Pisces, and that's going to be a 2-year cycle. So on March 7th, Saturn moves into Pisces. Some previous cycles of Saturn in Pisces, late 30s. Interesting, it was the start of Alcoholic Anonymous. Think about Saturn sobering up in Pisces, alcohol. Very descriptive. The death of King George and the abdication of Edward VIII. Very important succession of George VI. So you have the death of a king, the abdication of the successor, and then another king, the unexpected king, wearing the crown. That is happening with Saturn in Pisces in the 30s, late 30s. A lot of things around water and nature. Then in 1964 until 67, Nelson Mandela goes to jail, accused of wanting to free his people, basically. And yet on the other side of the Atlantic, Martin Luther King receives the Nobel Peace Prize. And so the civil rights movement with Saturn in Pisces opposing Pluto and Uranus in Virgo at the time. The most recent one was in 94-98, and there you see Mandela becoming president of South Africa. So one Saturn cycle later, he gets out of jail and he becomes the leader of the country. So you see again, the weak shall be strong. The unexpected one rises to power. And it's a form of liberation for the underdog. So that is true to both the Mars Neptune as well as Saturn in Pisces. A terrible massacre in the Rwanda, Burundi tribal war between Hutus and Tutsis. So there may be, again, something to learn from that, which I'm going to touch on. And it's a time for a peace agreement between Israel and Jordan, which was also unexpected and very welcomed. So what's important about Saturn in Pisces? Saturn in Pisces speaks about all the foundation of our lives. Saturn represents the things that we can rely on, the people we can trust, the systems that sustain us. When Saturn moves into Pisces, it's a time where things are murky, where the leaders are not always standing up strong. They can be weakened. It's when the cracks are showing. So the solid, earthy Saturn is in swampy waters. So it's a time where there's a lot of uncertainty, where you can't be superficial. You cannot just go business as usual. So there's a level of, I would say, weakness to begin with. But then, out of that, you have those who always took their power for granted, those who always thought they would remain on top, who begin to melt, to drown, to lose it. And so we see it's a test of leadership. And so when we see here in the 30s, what was going on? Germany was gaining power, Nazi Germany, and there was a lot of uncertainty. It's just before the war broke, the Second World War. And it is a time where there was a lot of insecurity. And you see in England, the king is dying. And then the successor is not measuring up. He's not strong enough. He can't do it. He runs away in a way. He abdicates. And someone else has to step in and take the lead. And so there's a lot of unexpected leadership that way, where those you rely on fail you, but then the David, not the Goliath, the Davids, the more modest, the simpler people show up, and they rise unexpectedly. So we see again Martin Luther King being recognized during the Saturn in Pisces. We see Nelson Mandela becoming president. That can also happen in the coming cycle of Saturn in Pisces, where big giants, the towering figures may dissolve, may experience weakness, and then the underdog may rise. So on a personal level, Saturn in Pisces can bring a lot of uncertainty. The economy, is it good? Is it bad? Are we taking risks or not? It brings this climate of, what do I have to lose? With Saturn in Pisces, you may have more incentives to say, I'm letting it go. I'm letting this business go. I'm letting this house go. I'm letting something go. And it's a freeing experience. So you simplify your life. You're not holding on to too much. And you can strengthen yourself this way. So less is more with Saturn in Pisces. The unexpected heroes, the unexpected leaders. Some of the key words here: test of solidarity and integrity. Those who fail that test can lead to the collapse of regimes and leadership. Uncertainty can lead to unrest, end of era, dissolution of systems. Think of the big empires, whether it's China, whether it's the Soviet Union, whether it's the United States, all important tests of leadership, especially the big imposing figures are going to be the one who are the most tested. Banana leaders versus enlightened leaders. So the corrupt and the sleazy and the liars versus leaders who can be more straightforward, come clean, and not come with too many promises. Modesty is powerful with Saturn in Pisces. Natural events, we talked about that. It's a time for forgiveness, flexibility, and grace in a positive way. Saturn in Pisces can be conducive to peace, can be conducive to forgiveness. At its worst, it is a time of unrest. It's a time where negative energy is festering. And then the negative energy bursts when Saturn moves into Aries. Many wars begin. World War II basically was launched during a Saturn in Aries cycle because of the insecurity and the fragmentation that happened prior to that. So we have to be careful during the Saturn in Pisces to heal and repair and forgive and be more graceful. Otherwise, it becomes murky, it becomes very swampy, and you have a lot of resentment, victimization that festers. And when you feel victimized, you feel justified to hurt others. So, it's that. So in our own lives, Saturn in Pisces can bring new role models. We can become unexpected leaders. We can start a new cycle of leadership. I know that in 94, the previous cycle, I met my spiritual teacher, and it was a year of complete transformation. I mean, radical for me. It was one of the most important years, and part of it was Saturn moving into Pisces and embracing a spiritual life. So there's that. There's the shift from the material to the spiritual. When you look at a planet moving into a new sign, you always want to see when it's going to be meeting the sun, either right before or right after the planet move conjuncts the sun. And in this case, Saturn will conjunct the sun at 27 Aquarius, and that's going to be February 16. So what happened is that as the planet is about to move to a new sign, it meets the king, and it has an audience setting intentions. So all the intention for the next Saturn in Pisces cycle are activated then. So pay attention to that date, February 16, with that exact conjunction at 27. How does this play out for you? Where are you at? And what kind of milestone is it for you? As Saturn moves into Pisces, it's going to stay there for 2.5 years, 3 years until it completely moves out of Pisces, until 2026. But in its course, it's going to get closer and closer to Neptune. Saturn, Neptune will be together in Pisces on the North Node. So all the things I mentioned about Saturn in Pisces come to a head February 25, early 2025. And that leads to the climax, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 Aries. So 3 years from now, why am I talking about it? You know, we're in 2023, hasn't started even, because everything that happens this year leads to 2026. You know, 2026 is the most important year. It's actually starting 2025, 2026. So it's as big as 2020. When we spoke about 2020 and how it's going to be a game changer, this is the next one. The Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Previous cycles of Saturn-Neptune had the Berlin Wall fall, had, you know, so many strategic and political changes of leadership. It's fascinating, and stay tuned because I'm going to release more material on this. I'm going to write an article in the Mountain Astrologer about this. So we need to study this cycle. So when I look at the first part of the year, these are the planets and what they're doing. So you see the nodes, Neptune, Pluto, Chiron, Saturn, Jupiter, and Uranus. And you see when their cycles are meeting. So I see this cycle here. In March, there's a lot going on. So you see Jupiter meets Chiron. There's a Jupiter-Chiron conjunction in March. And then there's another intersection here between Pluto and Jupiter. Okay. And then the nodes and Jupiter. So let's examine that. April, March. Oops, an eclipse. Sun, you know, eclipses occur when the sun is in the area of the nodes. In this case, either North Node or South Node. Here, it's the nodes are really moving backwards towards the beginning of Taurus, and the eclipse, the new moon, is at the very, very last degree, 2950 Aries. Wow. An eclipse is always eventful. It's always an energy where everything happens so fast. And we make important decisions, but this time it squares Pluto. So Pluto just moved to Aquarius in March, and the upcoming eclipse on the North Node squares that Pluto. So mark that date. That is going to be probably the most important period of time for 2023. I showed you the video that I did for 2022 and how I mentioned that end of February and early March would be the game changer. This seems to be the one for 2023. That's the beginning. April 19 eclipse. Soon after, Jupiter moves in Taurus and Mars moves into Leo. That's May 21, a month later. So you have an alignment in all the fixed signs. So Jupiter was in Aries the whole time and now moves into Taurus on the North Node. Square Pluto, square Mars. So this whole period of time between April 19-ish and May 21, 25-ish, a whole month, is the game changer. Power struggles, the economy shifting, and a test of leadership that we've been talking about. Saturn is by then in Pisces. Always look at the rulers of the nodes as well. Venus, Pluto, the ruler of the South Node, ends up squaring the nodes. Oh no, both rulers, Mars and Pluto, rule Scorpio, and both of them rule the South Node, and both of them are opposing each other. Venus is moving towards a conjunction to Mars, but it won't conjunct. That's for another video. So pay attention to this date. Just a side note, this is Zelensky, Ukraine's president's chart. His natal Mars is 0 Leo, retrograde, opposing his sun in Aquarius, a square Chiron in Taurus. So he has a Mars return opposing Pluto and square Jupiter. This will be a turning point. That month will be a turning point in the Ukraine-Russia war game. Like I said, I hope it's not going to be going nuclear. But it could also signify the beginning of the end. Generally speaking, we are anticipating major change in the Russian leadership. It doesn't look like, Putin will stay in power for too long. I'm talking years to come, but still. So this turning point, this Mars return Pluto, is of course dangerous for the Ukraine. He is targeted. There could be an assassination attempt, and even he could die. I mean, this is a time, if I were to speak to him, I would say, watch out. But it is also a game changer where Mars return, he could reclaim his dominion. So if there is if it is the beginning of the end, it will also affect the economy. It will also affect, global dynamics and power struggles. Interestingly, China's moon is at 3 degrees Aquarius. So Pluto, Jupiter, Mars will also oppose China. Joe Biden's moon is 0 Taurus. So everyone's in it. 0 fixed. What does that mean for you? What does that mean for us? How do we use this energy? In a positive way, Jupiter moving into Taurus on the North Node is full of opportunities. It is a time that is incredibly fertile. It's a time where the economy can start to pick up again. So there can be a shift of tides economically. And I believe in some ways, even if it's not immediate, even if it doesn't happen right then, it can start to pick up from then. Incredible, very creative, but it is a time where you will feel the need on a personal level to go solo, to leave the group. Aquarius is the group. Mars in Leo is you do your own thing. So if we look at it from a personal point of view, you may start, your own organization, you may start your own project and leave the current alliance, the current group that you're part of. Find new friends or just go your own way. So, with Zelensky, as we see a turning of tides and possibly, a game changer in the conflict, it can also mean that there are some changes in the alliances and how that affects, the political game. So how can we summarize all this? I don't want to take too much of your time. I don't want this to be too heady. I'm going to create more videos later that will focus more specifically on certain periods and certain transits. But it seems like the first part of the year, the first 5 months from January until end of April, early May, there's a lot of release and a lot of doing and energy moving out. So it's active. There's a lot of enthusiasm. It's also aggressive and scattered. Then the turning point is going to be end of April with the eclipse, solar eclipse, into the end of May with the fixed Grand Cross. And we will see a turning of tables then. We will see, both on a personal level, on a political level, new victories, and possibly for the economy, a complete shift. In July, the nodes are moving to Aries, Libra. That can be conducive to also peace between Russia and the Ukraine. It can lead to an agreement. At least it's leaning towards that. I think I'm optimistic. Thank you, everyone. Please subscribe to the channel. Support these sharing of knowledge and learning experiences. And you can join my Facebook discussion group. So this is called Evolutionary Skies. It's very lively, a lot of interaction, a lot of learning, speaking about all these charts in greater details. It's a lot of fun. Be safe. Happy New Year. And we will meet again.